All right, good afternoon. We're delighted to be joined here by Philippe Lazzarini, who you well know and is the Commissioner General of UNRWA. And he's to give you an update on the situation in the region and on UNRWA. Philippe, welcome, and you have the floor.
That's without transition. Thank you, Stefan. Good morning, colleagues. I just want to brief you a little bit about why I was here in New York. In fact, two main events. One was the Security Council last week, dedicated on UNRWA before the Middle East discussion and before the vote. And then also the Colonna report, which has been presented to you yesterday, but which was also very important for the organization. And after that, maybe I would just also share one or two comments regarding the latest development in the field. The main reason I was here last week, UNRWA was brought to the agenda of the Security Council, so it was not a brief on the humanitarian situation, but basically it was to bring the whereabout and the attack on the agency on the agenda of the member state as a peace security agenda. Basically, I was telling the member states, the member of the Security Council, that the attack on UNRWA are not necessarily motivated because of neutrality issues, but are primarily motivated by the objective to strip the Palestinians from the refugee status. And this is the reason why there are pushes today for UNRWA not to be present anymore in Gaza, but it's not only Gaza. We are also under a number of pressure when it comes to Jerusalem and the West Bank. I also called on the member of the Security Council for an independent investigation and accountability for the blatant disregard of UN premises, UN staff, and UN operation also in the Gaza Strip, reminding that as of today, today it's 180 UNRWA staff have been killed. Last week it was 178. We had more than 160 premises which have been damaged or completely destroyed, with 400 people at least having been killed while they were seeking the protection of the UN flag. We have also reports that our premises which have been vacated have been used for military purposes, either by the Israeli army, but also the Hamas or other political faction armed group on the ground. And we had also staff which have been arrested and also been mistreated, if not tortured. You have seen the report which came out yesterday. So hence the importance to have an investigation and to have accountability in order not to set a new low standard in future conflict situation. There was also the Colonna report. I am aware that you have read it, you have received it, it was commented, you heard the reaction of the Secretary General. We have and also the agency. We welcome the report, we welcome the recommendation, and we are committed to implement this recommendation. You have seen in the report also that the agency in reality has already a number of systems to deal with neutrality issues far ahead than the average of other UN agencies or even INGOs. But because of the complexity of the environment we are operating in, we need to be extremely vigilant, and we can always do more. I had a meeting this morning with the member states. I have informed them that we are now preparing, updating our response plan. We will, in fact, make sure that partners are aware of the measure already being taken and being in line with the recommendation, which one are the one we can also immediately implement as a quick fix, but there are also some recommendations which will require some additional staff, especially when it comes to international staff. And I guess you have noticed the ratio of international staff compared to national staff in our organization is certainly the smallest of any possible international organization. And there is also a set of recommendations which will require the support of host countries and member states, for which the administration alone will not be able to implement without a strong, firm commitment and support of the member states. So that's a little bit where we are. You remember that the report went into different fields, starting with the communication with the donor, our governance structure, our internal oversight mechanism, our neutrality policies, the neutrality of our installation, but we have also issues related to the union and also the education. On the education, it was primarily a summing up of existing studies, which have been quite extensive over the last few years. Let me just highlight one or two developments also in the field. I was in contact with my colleagues because before addressing, it's always good to know what's the latest. They do confirm some improvement, and it's always good to be able from time to time to inform about the improvement. The number of trucks going into the Gaza is averaging for the months of April 200, and we had a peak yesterday of 360. So this is a positive trend to compare to the previous months. Colleagues from WFP succeeded to cross Eretz at 3 occasions, and my colleagues are also reporting that convoys which went to the north have not been assaulted as they used to be in the past by desperate people who were struggling to get their share of the assistance. So these are positive development, but there is also fear now that we are getting towards a warmer season about a new possible health outbreak, especially in the south, where the garbage collection has become a priority for our colleagues to prevent a disease outbreak. But I have also been reminded about the deep anxiety prevailing in the south about the possible looming upcoming military offensive, which seems to be back on the table. I think I will stop here, maybe just also to remind that, and I was talking about the Catherine Colonna's report, that the report has nothing to do with the OIOS report. The OIOS report continue its due course, looking into the individual behavior of staff who allegedly could have participated to the October 7 massacre. This was not part of the remit of a Catherine Colonna report. This is OIOS, and I'm sure that you will be informed in due time by OIOS or by Stefan once we have the information. So, Stefan, thank you. I will stop here and to give time for questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Edie?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lazzarini, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press, and welcome back. I wonder if you could comment on Israeli allegations that the underlying premise of UNRWA is to promote a Palestinian takeover of the entire area that was once the original state of Palestine, and to get rid of the state of Israel and what UNRWA is doing to promote a two-state solution, particularly in education, which is supported by the Secretary General and probably almost every country in the world. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding this. First, UNRWA does not have an underlying agenda. We keep hearing also that UNRWA is perpetuating the refugee status, which is nonsense. Basically, it's as if you would say that an humanitarian response in a conflict zone is perpetuating the conflict. The reality is that it is perpetuated because of the absence of a political solution. Now, I reminded also this week that unfortunately, UNRWA was geared to be a temporary organization, hoping to end its activities the day there is a lasting and fair political solution, and we are 75 years later, and this is a lasting temporary, but it's certainly not UNRWA perpetuating the status. It has been our collective on the ability to promote a solution. Now, I also believe that if we are genuine with a two-state solution and we revitalize the road leading to the implementation of such a solution, UNRWA's temporary nature can be reinstated, and hence UNRWA can also prepare and pave the way for a future state to provide the services the agency is providing.
Thank you. Gabriel?
Hello, Mr. Lazzarini.
Yes, on education, UNRWA's, there have always been a controversy about the map and about the map preceding 48 and after 48. We are very clear in our schools that we have the map pre-48, and we have also the map today of a two-state, meaning by this we have occupied Palestinian territories, we have the state of Israel, and indeed in our classes we keep also teaching UN position regarding the conflict. So what is the UN position regarding the occupation? What is the UN position regarding the two-state solution? What is the UN position regarding the border? What the UN position regarding a number of these issues? So that's definitely in line with the spirit of what is expected in the UN.
Gabriel?
Hello, Mr. Lazzarini. Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English. Thank you for your briefing. The report that came out from Ms. Colonna yesterday clearly had a lot of recommendations, but it also said in it, as you well know, that UNRWA already had policies in place that were stronger in many cases when it comes to neutrality than other UN organizations or NGOs. My question is, can you give us an update on funding from UNRWA from countries that have suspended funding, and are you hoping that this report will now convince countries that have suspended funding to now resume it once again, and what has been the effect of the money that has been lost so far?
Yes, it is true that in January, within 48 hours, we had 16 to 18 countries who indicated the temporary freeze or suspension. Since, number of countries have come back, and many have also come back after the release of the intermediary report, which was made accessible a month ago. I hope that with this report and the measure we will be putting in place, that the last group of donors will get the necessary confidence to come back as a donor and partner of the agency. The only donor which will not come as a donor for the time being but for which we have a political support, is the US, since you know that there is a prohibition for funding the agency until March 25. And my task now is to try to bridge the gap left behind. Today, I can say that we have funding covering until end of June, which will bring us in July. So you can see today I'm slightly more, I wouldn't say relaxed, but more confident than I was 2 months ago when I had funding just for the next 2-3 weeks.
Maggie, Michelle, and then Dr. Hamid.
Hello, Mr. Lazzarini. It's Margaret Bashir with Voice of America. Well, the report said that you had robust neutrality. I'm just wondering now, in light of what's happened in the past, excuse me, in the past 6 months, how realistic is it for your staff to maintain that neutrality after what they've lived through and what they've seen on the ground?
I think it's a good question, but that shows also the impact of the robust mechanism we had until now, because with all what has gone, with all what the staff has gone through, we don't really hear the staff expressing their opinion through social media, and our staff continue to be fully dedicated to the work they have to carry on. I do also believe that both the staff and the communities are deeply anxious about the possibility that UNRWA could be weakened or dismantled. I think there have been an opinion poll, by the way, this week in Ramallah, both in Gaza and in the West Bank, indicating that between 80 to 90%, depending on where the people were, feel that dismantling UNRWA would also mean the end of a two-state solution. So basically, our staff is also very much aware about what is at stake. UNRWA has been such a lifeline, not only for the communities, but also for their own families, bearing in mind that the majority of our staff comes also from the community that we are serving. But I think it is also true that the report highlighted robust system ahead of any other UN agency, but so it is. We are used, UNRWA keep being the agency the most under scrutiny from our partners and our donors. But this is also related to the context in which we are operating.
Michelle, Abdelhamid, then Talal, then Joe.
Thanks, Mr. Lazzarini. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. You spoke about an increase in trucks for April. Is it enough to avert famine in Gaza? And today there's been some more evacuation orders in the north and intensified strikes by Israel. Has there been any communication to the UN on what might be happening in the north today? And just regarding the gap left by the US, you know, which countries do you think might be able to step up and fill that gap?
Yeah, I cannot comment on the question number 2 because I don't have this information, so I have to ask my colleagues in the field. I believe, you know, if the number of trucks we have seen yesterday, the 380, if that starts to become uninterrupted and being sustained, first it will show that if there is political will, we can do it. Why did we wait so long? And with such a flow of trucks, we will certainly be able to mitigate and possibly even to reverse the looming famine. But this, you know, we have always stressed that we were in a man-made situation, and it can only be addressed by political will and decision. And the last few days shows that this is possible. So yes, I don't know exactly how many trucks is required, but the increase compared to even a month ago start to become more significant, and the more we sustain this, the more we will have a positive impact.
Thank you.
And just on the funding?
Yeah, that's, you know, my first, it's really hand to mouth for the time being, on a monthly basis. I hope, and this is my objective, to muddle through month after month after month until the end of the year. But having said that, if it is a lasting suspension, it will have a sustainable impact on the agency. If it is a temporary suspension, I do believe we can find temporary solution with some donors stepping in. I just want to flag one thing. Since the beginning of the year, we had succeeded to raise $50 million just on digital fundraising, $100 million since October 7. We have almost no capacity within the organization, and this is an extraordinary indication of grassroots solidarity vis-à-vis the organization. It's not enough to compensate, but this is already an indication that we are finding alternative ways.
So just to clarify that, 100 million since October 7, just from
Grassroots,
people
yes.
watching.
People like
civilian.
you,
Okay.
like any of us here, absolutely.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but apparently the correct number of trucks is 316 yesterday.
You are not disrespectful at all. It's above 300, sorry. I've never been good at counting trucks, but...
Well, Juliet is.
Thank you.
Abdelhamid, please.
Thank you. Abdelhamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. I have few questions. First, how do you define anti-Semitism when Palestinians say the Palestinians have legitimate rights? They accuse them being anti-Semite. Have you ever seen one map by Israel that mentions Palestine? Have you ever seen one map by Israel that says West Bank even? Why they are allowed to do that? But when Palestinians say Akka or Haifa, then they are anti-Semite and they want to destroy Israel. That's one question. The second, allegations against UNRWA is nothing new. And you know probably there is a list of allegations from time memorial. The last one is against Pierre Graham-Bull, your predecessor. He was investigated for 2 years, and nothing was found against him. And I ask Stéphane Dujarric, do you owe him an apology or not? And I'm sure one day, many of these countries will owe you an apology for all the allegations against UNRWA. Don't you agree with me? Thank you.
I take note of your statement. On the first question, I have always said that there is no space for anti-Semitism in our school. There is no space in any of the UN school, and I have never said that there is any of it. So when it comes to definition, after that, who define what and how, I think you should ask the question to those coming with this definition. On the second question, I take it more as a statement for the time being. What I can say is that the agency has never, ever been as much under attack. There is absolutely nothing comparable with past, I would say, attack on the agency. The agency has never been in a situation where at the same time 18 countries are reviewing, freezing their contribution to the agency, and the agency has never been in a target of open campaign for the total dismantlement of its activities in Gaza and possibly beyond also. So I think the one we have gone through is quite unique in its, I would say, ferocity, but also in its scope.
Thank you. Joe Talal, and then Deji and then Ephraim. Go.
Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. First question regards Hamas. I noted in the report there were several mentions of Hamas, but no mention of any interviews as part of the independent investigation with Hamas personnel, I'll put it that way. Related to that, have there been any interactions at all between you or your senior officers of UNRWA with Hamas officials, particularly since October 7th, in terms of deconfliction or any other related issues? And would UNRWA be open to the idea of an external audit by one or more donor countries? I know there's mention of external audit by OIOS, but that's a UN agency. Would you be open to an external audit by outside donor countries? Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is the question you should have asked yesterday. I'm not in charge of the review per se. The only thing I can tell you is that we welcome the report and we welcome the recommendation, and my commitment is that we will be implementing the recommendation. There have been, at the beginning of the war, more deconfliction than today, because at the beginning of the war we still could have deconfliction with all the possible armed forces to make sure that we are not a target whenever we move or provide assistance. I guess today it's a little bit more complicated to have a counterpart from each parties to do constant deconfliction. And the last question was?
The last question was concerning whether UNRWA would be open to an external audit by one or more donor countries in addition to whatever OIOS or internal audits are performed.
You know, UNRWA has been audited more than once. I have even the feeling sometimes that you name it and we will find it. We are constantly audited by our donors. I believe we are one of the most scrutinized organization. Most of the time when I travel in our donor-based country, I meet parliament member and realize that up to 10 questions being asked to a government about their overseas budget, the bulk of the questions are related to UNRWA, and the remaining one, it's across the rest of the world and the rest of the UN or international NGOs. So we have been, and we will continue to be open to external audit. Here you mentioned about OIOS. This is something different. This is an investigation which requires, by the way, the cooperation of the member states. And I know that OIOS is in contact with the relevant member states.
Well, just not to belabor the point, but the report itself mentioned and used the term external audit by OIOS as one recommendation. That's why I was inquiring about.
But I cannot talk on behalf of OIOS. As far as UNRWA is concerned, I'm happy to have external audit organized by a member state. We have it on a regular basis. I have to see when the last one was terminated, and I'm more than happy to provide this information.
Thank you. Talal, Deji, Ephraim, then Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Lazzarini. Talal Haj from Al Arabi and Al Hadath Networks. The review report yesterday mentioned about 50 recommendations, among them 8 concerning the UNRWA securing the neutrality of your establishment, your people, etc. I would like to raise the question of the establishment. You have more than 1,000 in the 5 areas you are active in. You have no police force, you have no military, you have no intelligence services. How are you going to secure that the neutrality for these establishments in different areas is secured without the need for more money, employing more people? And that brings me also to another point, which is how sure are you can you can implement the recommendation without the cooperation of the international community, the host countries, the PA, and most important, Israel, which is calling for you to the end of UNRWA.
Thank you. This is the reason why we are regrouping now the recommendation, and as you rightly said, some of this recommendation will either require additional resource or will require the full, I would say, cooperation, support, commitment by host countries or Israel or the member states. And this is a discussion that we will have with the relevant parties. And that will certainly include also the question of the facilities. There are some recommendations. The agency alone will not be able to fully implement, but we are committed to implement it, but with the support. The recommendations of this report are not only for UNRWA, they are also for member states, they are also for host country, they are also for other stakeholders.
How confident you're going to get the cooperation from Israel?
I have difficulties to answer this question, but I really hope that the recommendation will be heard, and if there is a collective will, we should make it happen.
Thank you.
Does not answer the confidence, but...
Deji, Ephraim, Dennis, and then Stefan.
Hi, Mr. Lazzarini, Shudaji with China Central Television here. Hopefully, you will have no difficulty to answer my questions. You just mentioned UNRWA has never been ever under such attack. Last week, you were here, you were in the Security Council, you were sitting side by side with the Israeli ambassador. You were literally facing the accusation. Back at that time, what do you feel when he accused UNRWA of many things? And have you had a communication with him? And second, a follow-up. Since we have so many recommendations, 50 recommendations, and you said UNRWA cannot implement them all by itself, do you have a time frame of all those recommendations? When are you going to implement maybe some of them? It's a phased implementation. Can you explain a little bit?
Yes. Today, I start with the second question, obviously. Today we will be informing the member states on how we intend to proceed with the 8 set of recommendations. And we will, in the coming weeks, in a staged way, iterated way, be more and more precise about the response plan, about the resource being needed. But we want to kick off the process as from now on. So you will be kept regularly informed. One comment about last week, I keep reminding that the real intent behind the attack of UNRWA is of a political nature, because it has as an objective to strip the Palestinians from the refugee status, to start with in Gaza and East Jerusalem and the West Bank. And basically, this is exactly what we heard at the Council from the Israeli ambassador, that indeed this is a stated objective today. And this is also the reason why I want this discussion needs to take place now among the member states, so that we are all collectively aware of what is really at stake if we let UNRWA be dismantled in Gaza.
Thank you. Ephraim, Dennis, and Stefano.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lazzarini, how would you describe now your relationship with the Israeli authorities? How is it going, this relationship with them, first? And second, to the 85% that you mentioned that are afraid that maybe these ferocious attacks are going to end up with UNRWA being dismantled. What do you tell them as the leader of this organization? Thanks.
Well, what I tell them basically is what we are undertaking right now. We are aware of what is at risk, so we will leave no stone unturned, and we will bring the conversation where it needs to be to avoid such a situation to unfold. And this is the logic of the démarche with the General Assembly a few months ago, with the Security Council this week, and now we are looking at where is the next best avenue to shield the organization from this kind of attack, basically. Here I would describe the relation of UNRWA. UNRWA has a day-to-day relation with the Israeli. We are in charge of the entire logistic in Kerem Shalom and Rafah, for example. This requires day-to-day relation with a COGAT counterpart. Our office in Jerusalem is also on a day-to-day interaction with the Israeli authority. Now, the only function which has no official relation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is the ComGen. And here I would make the difference between my own relation or the relation between my function and the Israeli authorities.
Dennis and Stefano.
Denis Akishev, TASS News Agency. Do you have any plans to make trips to countries outside Middle East region, maybe to convince donors or talk about other problems? Do you have any plans to make trips outside Middle East region?
Oh yes, constantly. I'm constantly touring Europe. I just come back from Tokyo. I will also meet very soon the BRIC countries. So basically, yes, it's not just the Middle East, but it's also reaching out of other donors and other regions.
Concerning BRICS countries, do you plan to visit Russia?
I plan to go to Russia to visit the BRIC member. There is a meeting of the BRICS, and I'm invited to talk to the BRIC country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stefano now.
Stefano,
if I could just ask you to keep the question on the...
Stefano Vaccara, la voce di New York Ital Press. I have two questions. One, Italy withdrew the help. Do you have any message for the Italian government to convince them to support again UNRWA? And then in this city and around the country in the United States, students are protesting, occupying university. They've been accused of some of them have been accused of being anti-Semitic. What do you think about those protests, and do you have any advices for those students?
On the first question, I really hope that Italy, now that we have the report of Catherine Colonna and the Institute, will follow suit with other European countries and basically resume its funding to the organization. It is important not only for our bilateral, I would say, relation that Italy shows political and financial support to the agency, but also Italy is an important country within the European Union, and I think having Italy back also will also help and smoothen some of the discussion we might have in Brussels. So it's very important, and my message is I'm ready to go to Rome anytime, hoping that the country will come back. Now, on the students, I just want to, I have shared one message to the Security Council, where basically I have said that a peace process per se is not enough. What we need is healing. Now, I have been struck until now that empathy in this part of the world is most of the time unilateral. It's empathy only for the Palestinian and no understanding where the Israelis are coming from and the trauma October 7 has created in the country, or the empathy is completely for the Israeli with absolutely no empathy for the Palestinian. And I believe that this inability to express mutual empathy is at the source of the dehumanization of the conflict that we are witnessing. And I think a message which would also go for the student is learn to express compassion and empathy for the people in the region, because ultimately we expect that Israeli and Palestinian will live and deserve to live in peace and security.
Thank you. Alan, that'll be the last question. Sorry, because he has to go 2 minutes ago.
Thanks so much, Mr. Lazzarini. Alan Bulgati from RIA Novosti News Agency. Could you please describe the destiny of those suspended 12 or how many people from UNRWA? What will they do? And are you ready, shortly speaking, are you ready to re-employ them if it comes out that they didn't commit anything? Because as of now, you didn't get any proofs in writing. Thank you.
We will be guided by the advice of OIUS, and if we are requested or if staff are cleared, we will certainly rescind our decision. So the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
Otherwise, for the rest, I don't know where they are today.
Thank you, Philippe. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.